Three Lives, Three Worlds. The Pillow Book. Lower volume. Original work by Tanki Gongzi. English translation, Hamster 428. English editing, Rock Harlequin, Lily, Joanna Kuang. Part 3 Arania. Chapter 3. Fengju at last woke up after a sweet deep sleep. She sat in bed absently for a length of time. A moment ago, she had dismissed the maidservants waiting around her bed. These maidservants were like azure waters. She quite liked their appearances. Their service was also very adeptly meticulous. They had served her well. They were also observant of formalities and knew to show respect. They had addressed her Your Royal Highness. It stood to reason there shouldn't be anything for her to be dissatisfied with. What made her confused was that although these maids had called her Your Highness, they did not say Your Highness Fengju, nor Your Highness Jug, but instead calling her Your Highness Arania. Arania, she knew this name. She also knew Arania had been dead for many years. Her tomb must be covered in grass, her bones disintegrated since long ago. She also remembered she was battling against the tails of giant pythons for the saha fruit only a moment ago. Then in the midst of danger, she suddenly fell into an empty void. She didn't know what had happened in the void, but no matter what it was, it couldn't have been enough to change her into Arania in one brief blink of an eye. Her reflection appeared in the bronze mirror placed bedside. It was of a maiden dressed in red. She had a pair of dark slender brows, bright eyes, a tall nose, thin lips, and ivory skin. She frowned as she studied herself for a time. This was doubtlessly a beautiful woman. But was this beautiful woman herself or not? That, she wasn't sure. She had forgotten how she looked. This wasn't simply amnesia. After more than 30 millennia of ebb and flow, she had experienced things upon things, events upon events. She remembered everything well, from the time she braved the scorching sun to come out from her mother's womb, to the time she broke into the python's territory on her own with the sole aid of her bravery to steal the saha fruit. But this sort of memory was like a storybook. She knew the plot, but she only had a vague impression of the story's characters and sceneries. For example, she could remember her aunt, Bai Qian, but she couldn't remember how she looked. The past 30,000 years of her life was now feeling like a story someone had written on the pages of a book. After dazing for a while, she did call up some thoughts. In her aunt's hidden book collection, she had come across a time-traveling phenomenon similar to what she was experiencing now. However, that was only the imagination of the mortals. There was no sorcery in the realms that could muddle up time. If the maids had said Arania, then it must be the Arania of Bianiao lore. She feared this place was a replica of Fanyan Valley which had been recreated by a powerful deity. Although she was still young and unknowledgeable, as King Kaihu's heir, she had heard of such sorcery once or twice before. She feared a strange fate had somehow led her to fall into this world. As for being mistaken as Arania, she frowned in worry. Did that not mean her soul had left her body and now inhabited Arania's own? On her forehead immediately appeared 2 beads of cold sweat. But if she thought about this carefully, her inference was quite reasonable. If her face and body weren't identical to Arania's appearance, why would the maids lower their eyes and call her Your Highness Arania today? But if she did resemble Arania, why did Meng Xiao and the Bianiaos not recognize this when she first came to Fanyan Valley several months ago? Soul swapping was really no joking matter. If her soul took over Aranya's body, then whose soul was occupying hers? More importantly, where was her body now? Most importantly, how did it ultimately look like? Fengju's mind was going haywire. She didn't even know where to begin looking for her soul. On top of everything, the Saha fruit was still kept with her body. Fortunately, she had wisely placed it inside a pouch when she left the Tiankang cage. Unless it was her own incantation, no one else could open it. Combing through past events for half a day, she realized her concerns were mostly false alarms. Since there wasn't anything urgent waiting for her to do, Fengju eventually calmed down. She was glad she was a dauntless immortal. If she had been an ordinary woman who was unfortunate enough to fall into this place where she was all alone, where her future became uncertain, and where there was no way back, she would have been scared to endless tears. She had had a moment of panic, but after that moment of panic her mind was immediately able to clear. She'd live in peace where she was. What comes will come. For the time being she should just stay put. She reckoned nobody knew she had fallen into this place, and she couldn't expect someone to come to her rescue either. Therefore she was able to calm down. If this fate was already meant for her, there was nowhere for her to hide. If it wasn't, sooner or later she'd have the opportunity to find her body and flee from this place. Nothing could be done for the time being even if she rushed. Moreover, one could see Aranya was born to a wealthy household. She had nothing to lose. She would treat this as a restful retreat. Compared to borrowing Zhuge's identity at Fanyan Valley and always worrying about her wherewithal, this deception was much better. Therefore, this was actually profitable. The mortals had a poetry line. What did it say? I walk to where the water ends, and sit, and watch the clouds ascend. These mortals that were busy surviving day to day like scavenging ants had great wisdom themselves. That sort of talk was exactly right. She had not a single acquaintance in this place. Her past life was stuck outside this world. Everything she saw and heard was entirely new to her. Her mood used to be affected when she thought of the past, now it felt normal. Just one thought used to bring up a world of sorrow now, too, felt normal. Living Aranya's life, playing Aranya's role, throwing wholly aside the identity of Fengju, life actually passed by quite pleasantly. There was just one thing, it had to do with snakes. From the servant's words and Fengju's own speculations, Aranya's way of dressing, living, walking, and all sorts of other habits really did not differ from hers. She didn't have to deliberately imitate anything, she was quite pleased. She couldn't have guessed that a few days later, a pair of maids dressed in blue would be carrying a large and lengthy blue python to seek audience with her. Your Highness has not asked for Prince Qing lately. In anger, he swallowed up 3 oxen. We think Prince Qing misses Your Highness, so we especially brought him here to see you. The weather is warm today, would you like to bring Prince Qing out for a stroll? At this time, Fengju looked to the 30-foot-long Prince Qing who was hissing before her as her mind reeled. She sputtered and fell from her chair. In her childhood, Aranya was thrown into a snake pit by her mother to be raised, and thus developed an affinity with the snake species. It was said she had rescued this Prince Qing as a blue snakelet, raised him as a little brother, and named him Ah Qing, Qing equals blue. In the palace, from Shang Jun's attendants down to the menial servants, each and every one respectfully referred to it as Prince Ching. These 3 words inside the palace meant Aranya was a princess. The title Shangjun was the honorific the Bianiaos used for their head of state, which meant Aranya was a princess of an entire Bianiao clan. For Fengju, masquerading as a princess wasn't a difficult matter, but masquerading as a snake-loving princess. She woke up from the shock of that day, mulled over the matter, and passed out again before the incense stick could burn halfway. Nonetheless, she must overcome her fear of snakes. If she could, she would be successful in masking the eyes of the world as Princess Aranya and live in leisure day to day. But sooner or later, if she was discovered to be an impostor, she'd be a dead fish. Fengju was preoccupied in coming up with countermeasures for 3 days. At noon on the 3rd day, a ray of light came to her. She recalled that when she was a child, she was a picky eater and could not eat carrots. Her aunt hosted a 10-day carrot feast in King Kaiyu and trained her to change her eating habit during those 10 days. Surprisingly, it turned out to be very effective. Perhaps the same method could be useful this time. 3 days later, she booked the quiet innermost room on the 2nd floor of the capital's legendary Zwalixian. Fengju looked to the feast table full of snakes with a swelling head. On the table were cups upon cups, dishes upon dishes. There were stirred-fried snake eggs, salt and pepper snake, braised snake, snake soup, all in all 10 dishes made from baby snakes to aging snakes and every snake in between. A few steps away from the table was a wall screen, behind it was a vomit basin. After sitting still for half a day, Fengju tremblingly lifted her chopsticks. She ate bite by bite, vomited swallow by swallow. After downing a dozen bites, she entirely gave up and vomited it all out. On the final rounds at least her hands stopped shaking while holding the chopsticks, which could be considered a progress. Everything should not be rushed, she needed to take each step at a time. It wouldn't be too late to continue the battle tomorrow. With a pale face, Fengju pushed her way out the door, walking to the staircase with uneven steps. In all fairness, the snake soup was a delicious dish. If Prince Ching was made into a soup, being so large, she wondered how many bowls he would yield. In her mind suddenly emerged the impressive face of a painfully hissing Prince Ching. A snake stench shot straight from her stomach to her throat. Her face changed color as she rushed back inside the room. Because she had turned too quickly, she did not pay attention to the white-robed maiden walking in from behind. The collided white-robed maiden made a cry, then tumbled down the staircase. Fengju watched in shock as a young man dressed in black who happened to be walking upstairs timely reached his hands out to catch her, perfectly bringing the falling girl into his arms. Fengju silently mused that this was exactly how knight in shining armor should be played. But before she could catch the hero's face, her stomach churned and she made a dash toward the room for the vomit basin again. She leaned on the basin for half a day before she felt any better. By the time she pushed the door to go out, her steps were uneven and in a trance she drifted downstairs. Then she was greeted with a pair of piercing gaze. When her eyes caught the eyes of the owner's gaze, Fengju's brain slowly turned. Since the beginning of time, all cases of knight in shining armor had always been like this. The knight gazed to the damsel he saved, the two locked eyes, and from their gazes came their unspoken feelings which would lead to matrimony. But this eye-locking matter should be between the knight and his damsel, only then would it be romantic. However, at the moment, the heroic knight was instead staring at her, his big eyes against her small ones. What was the meaning of this? Feng Zhu had no idea. Only until she saw the rescued white-robed maiden stood on her toes and leaned half of her body against the young man did she comprehend the situation. After being bumped into, the girl fell and injured her foot. The young man who was staring straight at her with furrowed brow must be silently condemning her, the culprit. She hadn't taken care of this matter well enough. Feng Zhu took irregular steps as she came downstairs. On the last 2 steps, she lost her footing and almost keeled over when that same young man reached out to hold her. His effort was neither too soft nor too strong, it was just right. For this favor of his, she naturally had to look up and say her thanks. Then she placed a few gold ingots into the hand of the white-robed beauty. She was a princess, what did she have if not money? The beauty looked to the gold in her hand and seemed surprised. Feng Zhu placed her hands together and said, "Because I was in a hurry just now, I had bumped into you and made you injured. I have nothing on me but these vulgar things, I hope you'll accept them as payments for the doctor's fees. If you take them, then do also forgive me. If you don't like gold," she took out a plump purse and sincerely continued, "I also have silver, pearls, gems, and illuminating pearls. Which would you like, miss? Please don't hesitate to choose." After she finished a series of pretty apologies, the young maiden still hadn't replied, but the black-robed man had softly called to her, "Your Highness." Heavy rain suddenly poured outside the windows, its sound pounding like scattering pearls. Feng Zhu blankly turned her head. Like a white waterfall cascading over the eaves, rainwater continued to spill down from the sky. In front of this waterfall was the tall man, his hair as dark as ink, his facial features like painted lines. His eyes, when one gazed into them, seemed to usher in a snowy coldness of late wintertime. Did he call her Your Highness? A boom went off in Feng Zhu's head. This icy black-robed man must be one of Aranya's acquaintances. It was such a mistake to leave without her servants today. Normally when she met any of Aranya's acquaintances, the servants would help her buy a bit of time. After a word or two, she would be able to grasp her guest's identity. But in today's situation, it seemed she would have to use her last expedient, feigned ignorance. She pretended to be confused and said to the young man, "Several people have also greeted me as Your Highness just now. Have you mistaken me for someone else as they have?" The young man's calm eyes suddenly darkened, his sharp gaze affixed on her. At long last, he slowly replied, "Don't you remember me?" His gaze gave Feng Zhu goosebumps. He looked as though he had discovered her lies. She shuddered and tried to calm herself down. There were a great number of people who resembled each other in this world. How would she know whether he believed the words she said or not? Perhaps he was only using such expression to deceive her. She shouldn't rattle herself. She regained her composure, looked to the young man and firmly explained, "It's not whether I remember you or not. I've never met you and I'm not the princess you speak of." She hadn't finished when he interrupted her. With the same steady gaze, he coldly said, "I am Chen Yet." How could he be so stubborn after all she had said? Feng Zhu feigned anger, "I don't care whether you're Fu Yet or Chen Yet, Fu equals float, Chen equals sink, ... Nonetheless, her heart all of a sudden came to a halt. Chen Yet. This was a well-known name to her, second only to Aranya. In the legends about Aranya, more than half were linked to this name. It turned out the person standing in front of her was the Archmage Chen Yat. If standing before her eyes was Chen Yat, the more they spoke, the more awry things could go. At this point, a quick escape was the best policy. Thinking on her feet, she maintained her fuming anger and fiercely said, "If I said I don't know you, then I don't know you. I need to leave for an urgent matter. Make way." The young man seemed slightly shaken, but did not stop her. Instead, he stepped aside and let her through. Her heart thumped as she followed the corridor and left the restaurant. When she glanced back through her umbrella, the black-robed archmage remained standing by the restaurant's doorway looking in her direction, unmoving and rooted like a solitary pine. When he saw her turn around, pain seemed to flit over his eyes. She rubbed her eyes, and instantly it was as though nothing had been there. The water god seemed to have overslept that night and forgot to stop the rain. Rootless water incessantly poured down from the sky. Fengju leaned against the railing in thought. She recalled the stories she had heard, and it seemed Aranya and Chen Ye indeed had had a complicated relationship. As for what exactly that connection was, that day she did not gossip enough to know, and didn't force Meng Xiao to elaborate. Thankfully she was quick-witted enough to get through in the morning, but if Chen Ye was really Aranya's good friend, either she'd have to reincarnate or be poached. If she were to meet him a few more times, wasn't he bound to recognize that she was a fake? Furthermore, she drove a big nail into Chen Ye in front of a large crowd today. Regardless of whether there was a doubt in his mind or not, he might very well give her palace a visit tomorrow to inquire after this and that. At that time, she jolted and quickly called her personal maid, Cha-Cha, over. She frowned as she gave her order, "If His Excellency Chen Ye of the Archmage Estate comes over to inquire where I went today, tell him I spent the entire day at the palace." Cha-Cha blanked for half a day, then suddenly asked in nervousness, "His Excellency Chen Ye and Your Highness have never been very close. If he is inquiring into your business this time, could it be that you have caused some sort of disaster?" When she got to the word disaster, she could not help but shiver. Fengju ignored Cha-Cha's shiver and asked in surprise, "Are you saying Chen Ye and I aren't friends?" How odd, she didn't think the look Chen Ye cast her in Zwalixian this morning was one used for strangers. After a quiet moment of reflection, Cha-Cha replied gloomily, "Are you speaking of the friendship from your childhood?" She became riled. "When you were little, you remembered His Excellency Chen Ye is your cousin and took the initiative to attend his birthday. But he listened to the eldest princess and the third princess's instigation that you were filthy and threw your present away. After that, didn't you stop coming to his birthdays and never associated with him again?" With reddened eyes, she continued, "Princess, you are kind to think that such could be considered friendship, but in my opinion, His Excellency Chen Ye is not worthy of your friendship." Fengju blanked for a moment. Only one word was needed for her to see Cha-Cha was a loyal servant who would serve her with all her heart. Aranya never got along with her older half-sister and younger full sister. Fengju knew about this. The young incumbent archmage named Chen Ye was her mother's nephew, thus he could be considered to be her cousin. She also knew this. Among the three princesses, the eldest Princess Junya was best loved by their mother, the youngest Princess Changdi was best loved by their father, and Aranya as a newborn was thrown into a snake pit to be raised. She was neither close to her father nor loved by her mother. Among the three sisters, she was the most unfortunate. This, Feng Zhu also knew. But regarding Chen Yat, she had always assumed he and Aranya were on the same boat. After she'd spent half a day pondering, it turned out he and Aranya's pair of sisters were the actual childhood sweethearts. This, Feng Zhu didn't understand. How odd this all was. After thinking through the night, Feng Zhu still failed to follow. When she saw the morning rays dawning outside, she yawned and went to sleep. When she woke up from her nap, she saw Cha-Cha hiking her skirt as she hasted in. Feng Zhu sighed to herself that she had been quite a clairvoyant. She reached out to pick up a cup of cool tea, then as she drank she asked Cha-Cha, "So what did Chen Yat ask when he came over today?" Cha-Cha happily shook her head. "His Excellency Chen Yat did not stop by today, but I'm here to relay a surprising news which I'm sure you'll be very happy to hear." She continued in jubilation, "Your teacher is back. Mr. Mo has returned. He's waiting for you in the guest hall." The tea in Feng Zhu's mouth instantly sprayed onto Cha-Cha's face. Cha-Cha wiped the tea off her face and said, "Your Highness must be very surprised." When he left, Mr. Mo clearly said he'd return in half a year. It's only been a month since then, even I'm surprised myself. Feng Zhu was surprised, indeed. When she recovered, she felt she had downed 8 goblets of bloody mold today. If she were to talk about this mold, she also had to talk about Aranya's background. Aranya was a child who did not have the care of her father nor the love of her mother. Thus even though Feng Zhu took over Aranya's body, her two closest relations could never tell. Feng Zhu had been quite at ease during this time. But besides her parents, there was one other familiar presence in her life. It was her teacher. That year, Aranya's mother had cruelly tossed her into the snake pit. Thanks to her lucky star, she was not swallowed whole by the pythons but was instead raised up as a snakelet. The Aranya in those days did not have a human appearance despite the raising she received. Her teacher passed by one day and pitied the child. He rescued her out and brought her up under his wings. Each of Aranya's words, actions, and gestures was carefully taught by her teacher. At this time, this teacher, who was supposed to be on a trip, for some reason came back early. Wasn't this drinking bloody mold? And this teacher of hers who dropped in out of nowhere, would he be able to tell she was an impostor? Feng Zhu clutched her forehead. With an expression that was both painful and blithe, she said, "Teacher's return is naturally a joyous event, but now that I think about it, I did not sleep well last night. I'm getting a headache from the morning wind. Why don't you settle my teacher in first? I'll come by later to give him my greeting and apology." Cha-Cha was a loyal servant. As soon as she heard Feng Zhu said headache, she almost rushed out for the apothecary. A chuckle suddenly echoed in the courtyard. Feng Zhu lifted her gaze over and across the window pane. A jasper flute brushed aside the willow branch and out came a white figure. Feng Zhu's gaze followed the long robe. The white-attired man smiled. "It's been more than 1 month since we've seen each other, but you're getting a headache just as you see me. What is ailing you? Should your teacher diagnose and treat your malady?" Feng Zhu went into a daze when the word teacher came out from the young man's mouth. In Feng Zhu's mind, the word teacher always went together with the word old. Of course, her aunt's teacher Moi Wan was an exception, but there shouldn't be that many exceptions in the world, should there? Teachers must resemble Taishang Lejun on Zhukongtian, with grey hair and beard which were worthy of the title teacher. But was the handsome white-robed gentleman in front of her eyes really Arania's teacher? Was he the teacher who single-handedly brought Arania up? Fengju felt her lifelong beliefs had been thoroughly crushed. Within 3 steps, the white-robed gentleman had come before her. When he saw that she was standing there frozen, he glanced to Cha-Cha. Immediately, Cha-Cha bowed to the two and cheerfully took her leave. Fengju calmed herself, then raised her hands to greet the man. "Teacher, have a seat." She wiped away the perspiration on her forehead and offered him tea, then poured herself another cup to calm down. The white-robed man thoughtfully watched her and at length spoke, "I hope you're well, Your Highness Fengju." "Next," he added, "I'm Su Moi." The tea in Fengju's mouth sprayed onto his face. Su Moi was the West Sea's second prince. He was a suave charmer, who together with Lord Liensong were famous womanizers of the realms. He was also her little uncle Bai Zhen's favorite drinking buddy. Su Moi had a great understanding of tea. She had visited the West Sea once or twice in the past, and thus they could be counted as acquaintances. But could this mere acquaintance compel Su Moi to break into Arania's dream to rescue her? In her impression, he wasn't such a righteous man. And because of her memory loss, she naturally could not recognize her acquaintances. It surprised her that he was able to see she was the one in Arania's body. Nevertheless, meeting old friends in a foreign land was always a good thing. Once the pair took their seats, Fengju could not help but ask. With humoring eyes, Su Moi took from his sleeve a delicate white silk handkerchief and leisurely wiped the tea on his face. "You did not return after being in here for so long." The 4 pythons guarded the place day and night. Then the Bianiao Queen recalled that the Snake Queen perhaps could get rid of these pythons. "Liensong came to me asking that I save you." The Snake Queen was a white-tailed python born after prehistoric times. She absorbed heaven and earth's essence and remained in her original shape during her cultivation until she gained immortality. Zhukongtian confirmed her supreme divineness and Tianjun himself granted her the rank Yuanjun. She went by the title Goddess Qishan. Fengju now remembered this Goddess Qishan was none other than Su Moi's mother. "This dream is so dangerous, but without hesitation you have magnanimously come into the dream to save me. I have misunderstood you greatly in the past," Fengju said with some guilt. The warm breezy smile suddenly froze on Su Moi's face. He lowered his head as he looked to the tea bubbles inside his cup. At length he said, "Arania was really my student. She was 15 when I saved her from the snake pit. I raised her myself until she was 60. Although we weren't blood related, I considered her to be bone of my bone, blood of my blood." Su Moi's description silenced Fengju for a time. Out of the West Sea Water Lord's heirs, Su Moi was the most refined and amorous. People called Mo Shao a charmer because there were at least 800 hearts if not 1,000 within the clutch of his palm. However, people didn't know that he never picked these flowers deliberately himself. Mo Shao did not come to his beauties came to him. That was why when he used such expression to say bone of his bone, blood of his blood, it completely took Fengju by surprise. Su Moi glanced to her, stroked the flute in his palm then added, because I had business in the West Sea, I left Fanyan Valley for 2 years. By the time I came back, the previously lively girl had left behind only a grass-covered grave. The entire Bianiao clan insisted she hanged herself. He lapsed into a second of silence. For more than 200 years, I have been searching for the reason behind her death, but these Bianiaos covered up this matter rather tightly. Then Liansong came asking me to save you, telling me you have fallen into Arania's dream. Since it's her dream, I naturally want to come and see for myself. He glanced at Fengju and said in a soft voice, therefore it just happened to be convenience that I came to save you. There's no need to feel you've owed me anything. A smile suddenly appeared on his placid face. Anyway, I've also come this time for your help on something. Fengju raised her head and paid him attention. People said Su Moi's temperament was often curious. This remark was surely not false. Su Moi's smile: if you say it was warm, it was warm, if you say it was cool, it was cool. At this moment if you say it was hearty, it was also truly hearty. More amazingly was how he could wear 3 different expressions at the same time while each was completely honest. Well done, indeed, thousand-faced deity. Fengju was a grateful person. She nodded thoughtfully. I've taken a lot of tea from you in the past. If there is something you need which I can do, I will certainly do it for you. Su Moi seemed satisfied with her answer. He slowly swept his eyes around their surroundings and said, you've probably discovered yourself that someone had likely created this existence based on the world of Arania's past. Each person and scenery which existed in Fanyan Valley then will now be here exactly as it was. Additionally, if someone belonging to Fanyan Valley comes into this world, he will replace his corresponding clone. He pointed to himself. For example, I was originally Arania's teacher. The me that was reproduced in this world would instantly disappear once I entered into it. Fengju stammered, then are you to say I merged into Arania's body because I am Arania and vice versa? This entire matter was far too bizarre. All Fengju could feel was a bolt of lightning striking in her mind, and stars started to circle before her eyes. Su Moi regarded her a while then shook his head. With you, I reckon the creator's magic was not proficient enough and he thereby created a few glitches. Losing one's memory of the original reality once fallen into this place is one of those glitches. You are probably encountering the second glitch after that one. He looked outside the window. Arania's soul had turned into ashes. Even if everyone in the Bianiao clan can reincarnate, Arania cannot. Everyone here can be replaced by his original counterpart, except for Arania. Fengju felt her clenched heart relaxing when she heard Mo Xiao's words. She saw his gaze now transfixed on the distant weeping willow outside the window. She felt a sense of heartbreak as she cleared her throat and said, you said you needed a favor from me, we might as well talk about it now. What do you need me to do? That way I can also see what I need to prepare. After I help you, we can use our efforts in finding a way to leave. After a lengthy time, Su Moi answered faintly, at first glance, this fabricated world is no different from the Fanyan Valley of that year. However, after it was set in motion it was no longer linked to Fanyan Valley. Perhaps the person who created this world wanted to reverse the tragedy which had happened in those years by inventing a happy ending in this environment. He looked at Fengju. Arania had hanged herself dead. Whether there is now a happy ending or not, it'd still be a lie. Now that you're here to play the part of Aranya, I hope you can imitate her previous actions so that this world may reproduce Fanyan Valley's past happenings, so that I may find out the truth behind Aranya's death. The birthday of Aranya's mother, Lady Qinghua, had always been celebrated differently. Reportedly, Lady Qinghua was a refined and talented woman. An ordinary feast with dancers and singers would not be to her liking. Because her father wanted to please her mother, he pulled out all the stops every year for her birthday. According to the most recent news, her father had planned a large ship this year to take her mother on a river cruise down south. They would be going to Guanchen Palace in the south border to view camellias. Aranya was their daughter. Although she wasn't very well loved, her name was still included on the list the king commissioned. Fengju packed a few things and thought of the servants to take along while traveling south. As Prince Qing was a colossal 30-foot-long snake, he naturally could not tag along on the embarking cruise ship. The worries which had troubled her these past few days completely dissolved. Her heart was finally liberated. 2 days before departure, the servants brought Prince Qing to her residence. Her mind now relaxed, she lavished attachments and anguish onto Prince Qing without reservation. There were even 2 drops of tears spilling from her eyes. The servants were made to be even more convinced that their princess was the very same one they had always had. The recent coldness toward Prince Qing must have been their own illusion. Unfortunately, Fengju overdid the sincerity bit. At that exact moment, Shang Jun, who had not stepped into her home for over 800 years, suddenly graced them with his presence. Shang Jun was in a good mood these days and occasionally thought of this daughter, Aranya. He felt some guilt that he had been neglecting her on a normal basis. Thus he wanted to make a visit. Seeing this scene the moment he stepped into her home, Shang Jun briefly frowned in thought, then gave Fengju a look of affection. They departed on the 3rd day. Fengju gazed to the back of the dragon ship. Following closely behind was a smaller boat. The servants taking care of Prince Qing lifted the curtain and smiled to her. Prince Qing also poked his head out from behind the curtain and affectionately hissed its tongue at her. Fengju stood frozen on the shore, lost and shaken by the river wind. Cha-Cha held a stack of damask bed quilts as she headed to board that boat. Fengju finally found her voice and asked after her, "Where are you going?" Cha-Cha beamed, "Did your highness forget? Prince Qing is timid. Once he leaves the palace, he'll need your highness to stay by his side at night. The wind is strong on the river, and I'm worried you'll be cold, so I'm especially bringing bed quilts aboard." Fengju's legs turned to jelly and threatened to keel over. It was thanks to Sumoy that she was able to stand on her feet. Fengju held onto Sumoy's hand and woefully said, "Mo Shao, do me a favor. When night comes, please knock me unconscious, then take me aboard. I thank you on behalf of my entire family." Night fell as wind fluttered on the river. Inside the ship's main hall, light pearls shone as bright as daytime. A dozen figures sat around the feast table. On the host seats were Aranya's parents. Below them were the 3 princesses and a number of courtiers. The first courtier lining the table was Chen Ye, someone Fengju had met already. After him was Sumoy. Being the first time she got to meet the 2 princesses Junyo and Changdi, Fengju observed them intently and saw that both were as white as snow and as beautiful as flowering blooms. Their looks alluring, their movements elegant. Although she did not have much impression of the original world, she reckoned not many on Zhuangtian could surpass their beauty. Fengju sighed, Lady Qinghua really knew how to bear children. Dancers were performing in the center of the hall while Fengju was lost in her thoughts. These common sounds came in one ear and out the other, she did not know what they were singing. Within the misty water clouds, is where the distant dream is found. Fengju pensively downed one cup, then another, wanting get herself drunk. Not until Sumoy tapped on her head did Fengju gradually wake up in confusion. Like trying to seek night Sirius within the fog, she looked to the dancing beauties and traced out their fuzzy faces. The pearl's light was suddenly eclipsed to her right. Fengju slowly turned around to look. In the room where light and colors blended hazily, a purple-robed man suddenly appeared and unhurriedly took the seat beside her. This young man carried with him a chilly iciness, contrasting the colors and sounds in the hall. His long hair was a most striking silver, and on his forehead was an expensive-looking indigo jewel. When his icy face turned to her, she felt a sense of familiarity. Even such an icy face could make her feel familiarity. Fengju belatedly pondered whether she had drunk a bit too much tonight. While she was wondering who he was and why he even happened to sit down next to her, Shang Jun on his high seat took advantage of the pausing performance and smiled toward them. He projected his voice loud and clear, "I see Zeiss has also arrived. Arania has been drinking so dolefully, I'm inclined to think the cause of which is your late arrival. Although you left the mountain this time because of Junyo's illness, it's been a while since you've seen Arania. Why don't man and wife converse with each other for a bit?" The hall went quiet momentarily. The young man next to her, who was called Zeiss, faintly replied, "Yes, sire." Fengju sobered up instantly. On a clear moonlit night, the moon's reflection glided on the water. Water and sky were both spotless. On the bright sky was the solitary round moon. Underneath at the boat's stern were Fengju and Sumoy peeling walnuts and having conversations. The walnuts were sun-baked to crisp and fragrant perfection. The conversations had to do with Fengju's newly arrived prince consort, Zeiss Shenjun. Arania was barely an adult, why did she already have a prince consort? This was a long story. Sumoy told Fengju to peel the walnuts while he recalled memories of the past. According to Sumoy, this person named Zeiss was somewhat of a big shot. Within Fanyan Valley was a Qinan palace. This palace was under the governance of the Archmage. Since ancient times, the Archmage had always been chosen by heaven, his birth ever phenomenal. But his post was quite idle, he normally did not involve himself in political affairs. However, once the king committed transgressions, the Archmage could dethrone the king, thereby ensuring the long-term survival of Fanyan Valley. In other words, the responsibilities of the Archmage were to listen to the ways of heaven and supervise the advisors of the king. For this reason, the Archmage was always the first person a king needed to win over once he ascended the throne. The present master of Qinan Palace was Chen Yat, its past master was none other than Zeiss. All because of this reason, Arania's father, in her early 30s when she was still a minor, had arranged her marriage to Zeiss. Arania was a boulder her father had used to weigh Zeiss down. Fortunately, she was still young and they did not live together despite being married. 2 years later, rumors had it Zeiss resigned from his post due to the contraction of a severe illness. He then took refuge behind Mount Qinan and passed his position onto Chen Yat. Simoy looked to the circular moon in the sky. Ever since Zeiss asked to leave Qinan Palace, he also showed no interest toward Urania. Moreover, the two had never stayed together, so no one talks of this unfortunate marriage anymore. He glanced to Fengju. He hid in seclusion behind Mount Qinan, and although Urania was his wife in name, when she died, he didn't once leave the mountain to see her. This was why I didn't mention this part to you before. It was my ill consideration which had brought you surprise today. Then he frowningly said, I don't know why you and I get to see Zeiss leave the mountain in this fake world. He added, I've never seen this Zeiss before. Today was also my first time meeting him. Fengju deliberated. My father seemed to say he descended the mountain because of Junyo's illness. Simoy hesitated. Zeiss's medicinal practice was truly excellent, but if I'm not mistaken, Junyo isn't sick, she's just suffering from morning sickness. Walnut shells fell from Fengju's hands onto the floor. How can Junyo be pregnant when she isn't married yet? Did you remember incorrectly from your increased age? Simoy smiled faintly as he took the flute from his sleeve. What did you just call me? Increased what? Fengju smiled dryly and respectfully offered him a handful of peeled walnuts and an honest reply. I said your taste just increased, it's something we should celebrate. Simoy received the walnuts without reserve and kept the secretive smile on his face. You'll know when the time comes whether I'm speaking nonsense about Junyo or not. He rose and smoothed out his garment. It's not early anymore, should I knock you out and bring you to the Blue Python? Fengju shuddered. She grimaced and said, the moon is high, the sky is clear. How can we waste such a beautiful scenery? Let me catch the river breeze for half an hour before you strike me. Simoy laughed and took his flute back to his room, leaving her alone on the stern to enjoy the breeze. She was frightened by Prince Qing during the day, then suffered a scare just now at the feast. Coupled with a long ramble from Simoy, her eyelids now gradually closed in the breezy moonlit night. She seemed to be entering a dream as the cruise ship charged ahead. In her comfort, she heard a conversation several paces behind. Sister, you only ate a little at the feast before you threw up more than half of it, said a clear crystal voice. His Excellency's eyes personally roasted some yams and had the servants bring them over. Have a taste and see if you like them. She continued, I've always thought someone with His Excellency's eyes station in life would never near himself to kitchen work. Surprisingly, he roasted these yams very well. A softer voice replied, since His Excellency's eyes took reclusion behind Mount Qinan, he doesn't want others to disturb his peace and he hasn't needed the help of servants for many years. Of course he can do something as trivial as roasting yams. At this point, Fengju realized who the speakers were. As expected, they were no other than her two sisters. She had not wished to eavesdrop in the corner. Perhaps because she had chosen this secluded corner to talk to Simoy, and the sky was also dark, the two sisters did not notice there was an extra pair of ears. It was wrong to continue to listen to them, it also seemed wrong to go out. While she hesitated on what to do, she heard Changdi's crystal laughter. I'm afraid you're the only one who knows these things about His Excellency's eyes. From my understanding, His Excellency only left the mountain for your sake. He's been at the palace for 10 days but he hasn't given Urania so much as a glance. It seemed the rumors were true, he really does not care for Aranya. You may have also noticed Aranya's gaze at His Excellency's eyes tonight. When she heard Father say that His Excellency had come down the mountain for your illness, I clearly saw her face draining like a piece of parchment. She was so upset. Junyo's soft voice lowered into a whisper, "Sister, you are speaking ill. Don't repeat such nonsense lest others hear you." Changdi hummed, "Since you are always too kind, you can't see how arrogant she has become in recent days. She thinks she should be treated differently now that Father allowed her to come with us this year. She doesn't see that she is only a filthy sort raised by snakes. Even if she's right in front of me, I'd say the same thing." Then she added, "I really don't get it. If His Excellency's eyes doesn't care for her, then why doesn't he divorce her? She's only compromising his status." Those few words came with the night air into Fengju's ears. Should she continue to listen or immediately go out there? Fengju didn't have to ponder any more. She yawned and walked out from behind the corner. "How lucky I am tonight. I didn't expect that while catching river breeze on the stern would I get to hear my sisters having ideas about their brother-in-law. Are people not afraid of ears on the walls anymore when they speak shameless words and do shameless things?" Fengju's sudden appearance stopped both Junyo and Changdi in their tracks. Changdi was the quicker one to react as she immediately sneered after her initial hesitation, "In those days it was you who reached for the moon. Are you jealous that His Excellency's eyes only has older sister in his heart? The subject of shame is one for educated people to discuss. You want to speak to us about shame with that status of yours?" She was the younger sister, but she dared to deride her older sister so eloquently. With only one glance, one could see she was not well disciplined. Fairies in King Kaiu had been disciplined by Fengju so well that she had no one left to discipline now. At this very moment, Changdi was provoking the beehive. In fact, it made her a little excited. Fengju nodded in comprehension and smiled, "Oh, so because your status qualifies you to speak of shame, you freely speak shamelessly and act indecently. I've learned something new today." Changdi raged with hatred, "You!" She was stopped by Junyo's low voice, "His Excellency's eyes told us this is the hour to check my pulse. Go back with me." Her glance carelessly swept across Fengju, but it was Changdi to whom she said, "There are times when engaging in these senseless war of words will only condescend ourselves." When she finished, she pulled Changdi and turned away. In a small room, on an embroidered cushion by an intricate gold-inlaid table, Su Moi poured himself a cup of wine. The oyster pearl emitted a soft glow on the narrow table. The Bianiaos were only earth fairies, but their wealth was rather ludicrous compared to the water gods of the four seas. Su Moi inattentively played with his cup. The crowd outside had vowed this dream was created from Aranya's sentiments. In reality, she had died and turned to smoke. What sentiments? What dream? Alas, he still let his heart dare to hope even with those simple words. He almost believed. He was thrilled at the time. If, like what the Bianiao elders said, this was truly Aranya's phantom mind, he wanted to waste no time in entering it. He might be able to find out what was haunting her if he were to go inside. What exactly was her phantom mind? Was there a place in it for him? He didn't know in the past, and he still didn't know now, but he wanted to know. By the time he was really able to come inside and look around, he realized this place was merely a simulated parallel world. He was disappointed. There was truly some selfishness in his rescuing. He remembered Liansong's words to him that day, with Dong Hua there, he will undoubtedly ensure Fengju's safety. I'm not worried about this. Dong Hua should be together with Fengju. If you find Dong Hua, you'll find Fengju. The most important mission of your trip is to first look for the two of them. Finding Fengju was an easy thing to do. That day while drinking in the restaurant, he had witnessed the run-in between Arania and Chen Yat. Feeling suspicious, he came to her residence the next day and made up some lies. He got a mouthful of tea specs from her and an impression which lasted until now. But what Liansong said about Dong Hua wasn't right at all. Dong Hua didn't appear until today, he and Fengju didn't stick together. What he told Fengju about Zeiss today couldn't be counted as lies. He truly had never seen Zeiss before. After he came into this world, he also forgot how Daijun looked due to the glitches. Daijun for the same reason did not recognize him. However, he snooped around Qinan Palace a few days ago and saw Zeiss' portrait in the palace's secret lair. This portrait did not show the same purple robe and silver hair image they saw today. If Dong Hua was determined to borrow Zeiss' identity, it wasn't difficult for him to use a correction spell and replace the Bianiao's memories of Zeiss' appearance with his own. A correction spell wasn't a powerful sorcery and was harmless in this world. It was exactly the king's style to use a correction spell rather than to change into Zeiss' appearance for this masquerade. Su Moi knitted his brow and mulled over everything. When Fengju was seriously injured, her soul might have needed to separate from her body to recuperate. Any decently skilled fairy would know it was best to heal inside the womb of a pregnant woman. Could it be that Daijun had placed Fengju's soul into Junyo's womb? If that was the case, it would explain why Daijun was so attentive to Junyo. But unexpectedly, Fengju was one of the glitches, and her soul went to Arania's body in the end. Daijun did not seem to know about this yet. This show was getting more and more interesting. Su Moi smiled. Light finally shone on several things. Fengju and Daijun were now together, but they were concealed from one another. He also needed Fengju's help, so he couldn't let these two meet just yet. It wasn't that he lacked righteousness. Since the beginning of time, coming into contact with worldly dust would always lead to persistent sentiments. These sentiments had plagued him for many years, and only Fengju could release him from it. Before he met Arania, no one had ever occupied his heart. To this day, he still remembered that warm breezy day when a child in red bridal gown and beautiful makeup tapped on the chessboard with her fair slender finger and tentatively asked him, "Teacher, what is troubling you? Are you unhappy because I'm getting married at such a young age? These are matters which will not yield fruits even if we spend time thinking about them, so what is the use of thinking? Let's take advantage of this beautiful spring scenery. Before the palanquin arrives, let me accompany you in a game of chess." How could someone with such disposition hang herself? The cup of wine was becoming warmer in his hand. In the pale illumination of pearl light, the white-robed man poured wine onto the ground and softly murmured, "Billion Chun tastes best when it is warmed until there is a fragrance of lotus after the rain. Try and see if it's the same taste you've always loved." His gentle voice contained a trace of lonely desolation. Wind gained speed outside the window. Within the whistling wind was a sound of muted mourning. End of chapter 3.